Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, we love talking NFL football. We get a look at the openers from our good friend Jack, one of the top odds makers on the globe. And now we go to the other side of the counter. Brian Blessing, Bruce Marshall here in Las Vegas. Diving in, seeing what these numbers offer. And Bruce, we're talking Thanksgiving football. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us here in Vegas. And I think the games kind of build to a crescendo, but it starts with Chicago and Detroit, and the Bears a 1-point favorite. Total in the game is 38.5, 39. Good luck trying to figure out either of these offenses.
And it looks like another Detroit season seems to be going down the drain here, Brian. And Matthew Stafford with his back injury still apparently not ready to return and bail out what is now an increasingly struggling Jeff Driscoll. 3 picks, 6 sacks, and that was only against the Skins on the weekend. So they're in a bad way right now. But Chicago's highlights aren't going into any 2019 time capsule either. Although there was finally a Khalil Mack sighting on the weekend versus the Giants. Mitchell Trubisky did score enough to beat Driscoll a few weeks ago at Soldier Field. But it's interesting noting the Lions have been even worse value lately on Thanksgiving, 4-11 the last 15 than they normally are. Might prefer the under here more than anything. Bears 14-3 that way, last 17, and 6th of the last 8 in this series going under. So our score forecast in the sheet was 19-14 Chicago to beat Detroit. And by the way, you look at our that cover story I wrote in the Gold Sheet this week. I talk about some old Thanksgiving memories and some old Lion games, including one that has been forgotten by historians and shouldn't be.
All right, there's a little hidden subplot in here that I'll get to, but let's just talk about Buffalo at Dallas. Dallas is laying a touchdown. Total on the game is 45. Dallas is 0-4 against teams with a winning record. Buffalo is 8-3. Lost a close game to the Patriots. Make the case they should have beat the Browns. More than anything, they beat themselves. And they had one bad effort at home against the Eagles. And I know they've not played that great a schedule, but neither is Dallas. And Buffalo's fared better against a bad schedule than Dallas has. And when Dallas plays against winning teams and good defenses, the offense doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. I'm intrigued, Bruce. Is it more a lack of respect for Buffalo, or is it Dallas is this public team? Does this number seem high to you?
Both there. I mean, it's why they cleared the decks for national TV Sunday afternoon, so all you could watch is Dallas. But they're overvalued for sure, and Buffalo's still undervalued. Although, I mean, you're right. I mean, the Bills' schedule, let's look like an NFL version of last week's Alabama, Western Carolina, or Auburn, Samford. So it'd be hard for them to be worse than 8-3 against that schedule. Things start to get tougher right now for the Bills. They line up the Ravens, Steelers, and Patriots after this one. But, I mean, you can only play they put in front of you. And I think Buffalo's going to come out of this okay, and they're going to make the playoffs. It doesn't matter if Bowling Green and Akron were on the slate. The Bills have developed some pretty good habits, especially Josh Allen, second-year quarterback. He hadn't tossed a pick in 5 weeks before, just one misfire on Sunday against Denver. And the Bills' defense is a lot more gnarly than some of those stop units that Dak Prescott was carving up earlier in the season. Yes, I think Dallas is overvalued here. Might win it, but I don't think cover it. Much rather have the Bills plus. 21-19 Dallas is our score forecast in the sheet. Note that Dallas is only 1-7 versus the line its last 8 on Turkey Day. So Thanksgiving and the Cowboys' point spread fortunes have not gone well together.
I'll throw very quickly one thing in here. Buffalo's defense is similar to the Patriots' defense, which is unbelievable this year. In one respect, they've got the lockdown corner in Trey White. Did it again yesterday. He's always bailing the Bills out. He takes the opposition's best wide receiver away. He literally, we said he'll take Beckham away in the Browns game. Beckham will get a little, but not a ton. Same thing's going to happen with Cooper. It comes down to, can the Bills stop Elliott? If they do, I think they can force Prescott into making some mistakes. But the Cowboys run the ball effectively. That's the MO for them to win the game. But the one little hidden nugget I would throw in there, Bruce, all these guys, all around football, they love the spotlight. Well, the Bills aren't on Sunday Night Football. The Bills are on Monday Night Football. This is literally these guys, and they feel so thoroughly disrespected. Trey White should have thought he should have made the Pro Bowl last year. Their safeties are as good as any safeties in the NFL. They just don't get the spotlight at all. I think this is a big, big deal for them to be on the national stage. It's literally their only shot.
I know. And, you look back this year, what they've done on this Monday night schedule. We've had the Bengals on. We've had the Redskins on. We've had Miami on. We've had the Giants. I mean, it's about time we get to see the Buffalo Bills on national TV. Here we go.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying for the players, I think it's a motivational thing for them as well. All right, New Orleans, Atlanta, what do we do 1 week to the next? All right, New Orleans back on the beam. Atlanta, wow, those 2 weeks off the bye were terrific. I don't know what happened yesterday. I mean, the offense was a no-show, and Tampa Bay had their way with them.
Well, yeah, this is interesting. The nightcap on Thanksgiving here. And, now that the Saints have effectively tucked away the NFC South, they can work on cleaning up some of their loose ends. And they got a few penalties for starters, way too many for Sean Payton's liking, over the next month in preparation for the playoffs. They also figure to be on high alert here in the ATL after the Falcons scored one of the season's most improbable wins when rolling 26-9 at the Superdome a couple of weeks ago. They sacked Drew Brees.
And an impressive win.
Yeah, and they sacked Drew Brees 6 times in the process. So, but any thought that result and the subsequent romp at Carolina signified a Falcon turnaround were quickly dispelled by another fall into the abyss last week versus the Bucs, as you mentioned. And that looked eerily like the efforts from the first half of the season. And it's casting further doubts upon Dan Quinn saving his job here in December. So I think they're a little bit of a risky read here. And the Saints are too. The Saints aren't covering every game now, but I think they'll bounce back. The fact they got whipped that first game, I think, ensures that they should be pretty focused here. 33-20, we're going to give the Saints a shot to bounce back Thanksgiving night.
All right, Bruce. Green Bay got taken to the woodshed. I'm sure that doesn't sit too well with Aaron Rodgers. 6.5 on the road at the Giants. Totals 46.5. The one thing is with the Giants, he was the shiny new toy. This is what I said to Jack. When Jones came in, it breathed new life into this team, but it really hasn't been pretty of late.
No, and, so even with the Jets now temporarily out of their crosshairs, the New York Cowboys, at least they still have the Knicks and the Giants to pick on. And the G-men continue to provide cannon fodder. They're now 7-20 straight up since Pat Shurmur was supposed to pick up the pieces from Ben McAdoo's regime. A little bit of life. I still think they're better off with Jones than they would have been with Eli. So they're getting this kid's he'll have his training wheels off by next year at least. But now the G-men get to face an angry Packer team, like you said, after that stinker versus the Niners. I don't know that Green Bay is all that great, to tell you the truth. And I'm a little tired of seeing Aaron Rodgers. Didn't mind seeing him get smacked around the other night. But now they have very little room for error. They have no room for error if they want to win the NFC North. The Vikings are level with them as we hit Thanksgiving week. But the last week's New York cover at the Bears is no buy signal for the G-men because the road dog roll is the only one that has been pretty good lately for the Giants. They're 1-7 versus the line their last 8 here at MetLife. And I think technically there's also a case for Green Bay to bounce back. 32-18 Pack. That's our score forecast in the sheet. So we do think they bounce back. Giants sink to another loss, and Green Bay will put the pressure on the Vikings to do something on Monday night.
All right, Washington's at Carolina. Carolina's laying 10, totals 40.5. Punch to the gut for Carolina. Played their hearts out against the Saints. Came up just short. Really suspect play calling at the end of that one. But the bottom line is Washington beat Detroit, but it was a kickoff return that won the football game. The Haskins kid looks lost. Now you're taking him on the road. I don't know, Bruce. I just think Carolina frustrated. Could they be disinterested? I guess, but I think this is a stat padding kind of day. I think Carolina takes it out on these guys. I think this number is low.
Well, maybe we'll see. Redskins wins are such a welcome surprise these days in D.C. that I think Congress might decide to add a few days to the holiday break after a rare success versus the Lions, like you mentioned on Sunday. But remember, the Redskins were dealt some of the league's nastiest defenses: Cowboys, Patriots, Niners, Vikings, Bills, in the first half of the season. That was a cruel trick to play on a team with major quarterback and offensive line issues, which haven't been solved yet. But they do have a couple of bright spots, like the rookie wide receiver Terry McLaurin from Ohio State emerging now. And maybe the Skins, who are 3-2 versus the line their last 5, and people look, they played the Niners and Vikings within 10. It was rainy, the Niners game, but maybe they're not an automatic go against. We'd advise Panthers place kicker Joey Slye to shut down his Facebook and Twitter accounts this week after a couple of missed PATs and an errant short field goal versus the Saints might have wrecked Panther playoff hopes. I think this is a tricky spot for the Panthers. I'm not sure they're going to do it, but the anti-Washington case, like you say, is always there. We had it 22-17 Panthers on Sunday.
All right. San Fran is at Baltimore, not for the faint of heart. 3.5, 4. Baltimore's favorite, totals 46.5. I think it remains to be seen how Baltimore fares here against the Rams on Monday night, but this Niners team is for real. And let the hype begin, Bruce. We'll be the first to say it because you're going to hear it 100 times. This could be a Super Bowl preview.
Yeah, it could be. I put that right at the end of this write-up in Gold Sheet this week. And you're right. We're doing this before the Ravens play the Rams on Monday night. But if Bill Belichick couldn't figure out Lamar Jackson a few weeks ago, might anything short of a reincarnation of the 85 Super Bowl shuffle Bears have better luck? Unless it's the 10-1 Niners, whose D has at times resembled Buddy Ryan's carnivorous bunch from the 80s. And they are the one-stop unit in the league that seems to have the foot speed to perhaps neutralize Jackson. They have not only, when they have dismantled some of these offenses like the Rams and the Packers, they've not just stopped them, they have punished them, and with just nowhere to breathe. So maybe they're the one stop unit that can slow Jackson down a bit. With his full complement of weapons now back on hand, Kittle's back in there, Jimmy G can probably trade points. And note that the Ravens had curiously covered just 1 of 9 at home before those recent wins versus Belichick and the Texans. So for what that's worth. Super Bowl preview, maybe. We gave the Niners a shot. We took them 28-22 as a Gold Sheet key release this week.
All right, Bruce, AFC South game. Money on Tennessee now. It was 3 down to 2.5. The total on the game is 43.5. I will say this, be very wary of Tennessee making a big push here. They control their own destiny. They've got Houston twice. If they win this football game, Tennessee has a real shot in the AFC South. The total to me, I think, is a boo-boo. They played at the beginning of the year, 1917 was the score. That was when Mariota was running this offense. They couldn't get out of their own way. Tannehill is a serviceable quarterback, and because teams have to respect the pass and what he can do with his feet, it brings Derrick Henry into the equation. Tennessee is now a dead-over team, and they're on a run.
You're right on all the accounts there, I think. With the Preds having hit the skids and Vanderbilt still being, Vanderbilt, the Titans are now the talk at the Pancake Pantry and the various hot chicken eateries around Music City, as they should be. Thank Mike Gravel, like you said, for finally seeing the light last month and pulling Marcus Mariota at quarterback for Tannehill, who's now 4-1 straight up against the line as the starter. At the same time, the offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, is wisely no longer using Derrick Henry as a decoy, another 159 yards rushing against the Jags on Sunday. And the Titans suddenly have a dangerous look. Now, it's been home road here the last month plus, but I mean, that's we're seeing this offense start to do something here. And I think that's worth a look. Not sure any of this applies to Indy, who's continued lean on their infantry, even with T.Y. Hilton available again, suggests that Jacoby Brissett's limitations in taking the Colts to the next level. 27-22, Tennessee, we think they go in there and win. We agree with you. This team might be one to watch.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Philly in Miami, Philly 8.5, 9 on the road. Total on the game is 46. I wouldn't go anywhere near this game, Bruce, unless Buffalo beats Dallas. If Buffalo upset Dallas, Philly gets a real bounce in their step and says, we're breathing here. I mean, other than that, this game is non-existent to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's no artistic masterpiece, I think. And I Doug Peterson is really disappointing right now. I mean, I haven't seen anything from the Eagles this year whatsoever. Callers to Angelo Cataldi's show on WIP are now turning on Carson Wentz. That's not really a surprise in Philadelphia, is it? After that 4-turnover stinker versus the Seahawks.
They don't stretch the field, Bruce. It's a slant route, and it's like amazing. I mean, defensive coordinators are no dummies. They see their limitations. I mean, all these cornerbacks and safeties are jumping routes because they just never stretch the field.
Well, if they get these wideouts healthy again, that might change. That's what they're hoping. But the neat trick will be if Cataldi and Al Morgani, though, can convince these birdbackers that a forgiving upcoming slate, beginning with this one at Miami, still makes it likely for a December 22nd NFC showdown versus Dallas at the Link. Philly's got to address some issues beyond Wentz in the interim here, but the bottom line here is I think the feel-good from the Dolphins from a couple of recent wins is gone, as those heavy losses to the Bills and Browns have Miami ready to turn the page to the offseason and the draft. So I think we're going to give Philly a look here. 26-14 Birds. Even if Dallas wins they're a game behind Dallas, but they got another game with them here. So if they can keep winning here and the schedule breaks right, they will have a shot at them on December 22. So I think they'll, whatever they got, we'll see it this week.
All right, interesting game. We nailed the Bruce. I mean, we talked about it in this podcast last week. You were on my radio show. I asked everybody under the sun all week long. I said, well, what am I missing here? That was just, no knock on the Raiders. That was just an NFL buzzsaw. Situationally, they were walking into, and they tried to do whatever they tried to go there early. They knew, Gruden knew that was just a horrible spot, and with Kansas City on the on-deck circle, and they got mauled. And now Kansas City off the bye, maybe it's their chance to feel their oats, put the division away, and let's come back in the discussion as a Super Bowl contender. I don't know if the Raiders hit the ceiling and that was the punch to the gut that sends them sideways, or can they rally the wagons here, catch a 9.5, 10, total 53?
Yes on all. Though I do get the feeling, that result last week, that suggested the Raiders are a little bit more of a pretender than a contender. Well, listen, in those recent games they won at home, they were in peril in all of those. Detroit could have had them. The Chargers definitely could have had them. And the Bengals were right there with them. So they were dodging bullets there for a few weeks, and then they got their comeuppance against the Jets. This team just isn't that great yet, and they're still a work in progress for Gruden. But they have been pretty interesting as an underdog. They're 5-1 getting points this year, and Kansas City, though, did win that. It was an odd game back in week 2 at Oakland. All the points were scored in the first half. All Kansas City's 28 were scored in the second quarter. But they've been a little bit erratic, and they haven't had they haven't offered a lot of value at home, although they played a couple of those games without Mahomes. I don't know that they're going to cover this one. 28-24 Chiefs is our score forecast. The Raiders, when you least expect it, they come up with some pretty decent efforts this year. The game against Indy, the game against the Bears over in London, the game at Houston, they played pretty well. So I think they'll keep this one close, maybe not win it on Sunday.
Bruce, it's still Tampa Bay. But they're at Jacksonville. Jacksonville's 1, totals 49. It's not going to shock me at all if the money swings around and Tampa ends up being the favorite here. They can go up and down the field with anybody. The question is, does Winston make goofball mistakes? But their defense was flying around this past week. But more than anything, Bruce, and this doesn't show up in a box score, but if you watch that Jacksonville game, it's over. They are running for the bus. Against Tennessee, they're doing this undisciplined nonsense again. Guy's going to, an inch away from getting a fight. Fournette almost came off the bench again, and he did it last year. They're unraveling right before your eyes, Jacksonville.
Doug Marrone's going to get fired here. I'm not sure if it's this week or next week, but it's over for him, I think. And the question in Jacksonville is if it's going to be over for Tom Coughlin and the front office too, because and the owner Shad Khan with Khan has suggested as much in recent weeks. So let's keep an eye on this situation closely. Tampa Bay is not lifeless here. They're scoring some points, and Jameis Winston is putting up some pretty interesting numbers, although he keeps making mistakes. But there's a lot of offense there. They're scoring points, and they are also over 10-2 their last 12. So I think that would be the first call here, especially since Jacksonville's defense, like you said, is doing some screwy things right now and losing its focus and discipline. Nick Foles, though, has not been has not helped Jacksonville since coming back in there. You might be wondering why he signed with these guys now. 35-26 Tampa Bay. We think just because the nature of Tampa Bay's games, they get rolling here and it starts being higher scoring, the Jags will score more points than they have in recent weeks, but they'll give up more too. And it's that over trend here. I think of all the over possibilities this week, this total is only about 49 we're looking at now. That's not high enough for the Bucs lately, and I think this one flies over up there in Jacksonville.
All right, the Jets at Cincinnati. Jets beat, an ordinary, if not bad, Giants team. They won at Washington, where Haskins is trying to figure his way, and then we just said situationally that was a horrible spot for the Raiders. Are the Jets good enough to be laying ever against anybody? 4.5 on the road. Cincinnati yet to win. They have several winnable games, Bruce, but when you get to the end of the year and you're winless, I mean, these guys, they don't want to go down in history. At least Cincinnati's going to be trying.
Well, it's funny. I heard Brian Billick a couple of weeks ago talking about the NFL this year. He said he's never seen so many bad teams. And sometimes, if they start showing up in a row on your schedule, you got to take advantage. And that's what the Jets are doing here. Oakland wasn't bad, but certainly the teams before that. And here's a couple more. They got Cincinnati here. They got Miami the next week. Hey, looky here. The Jets could be on the periphery of the playoff mix by mid-December. I don't want to jump too far ahead of myself, but they could really get the 6 and 7. Ryan Finley's audition for the quarterback job here in Cincy is going about as well as Akron's challenge to win the MAC. So attention is in Cincy right now.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, well, I was trying to find an analogy there that's not working for somebody. But attention in Cincy, it's rightly turning to Tua Tagovailoa's hip and other potential saviors that might appear in the draft. Unless Zach Taylor bites the bullet here and reinserts Andy Dalton to give the Bengals a better chance to win, that big donut gets larger because Ryan Finley's audition, like I said, doesn't look like it's going that good. I think the Jets get him here. They've scored 34 each of their last 3 games. Something's happening here. Sam Darnold is hot. They're playing confident now, and this is not much of a hurdle to clear. 24-10 Jets. They'll push this thing into mid-December, and then the schedule gets tougher, but a little bit more interesting now for the J-Men.
Nothing I can recommend here. This Rams-Arizona game, Rams on the board as of today, laying 4. Totals 46.5. We got to see what happens on Monday night. I mean, the Rams season is getting away from them. If the Rams got a win over Baltimore, maybe there's a sense of belief that, hey, we're let's reinvent ourselves here and make a run. If they lose to Baltimore, their season's probably toast. And it would be Arizona for me because Arizona at least plays hard every game.
Yeah, and the Rams after this, Seattle, Dallas, San Francisco, those last 2 on the road. The schedule's not easy. So, they could be looking on the outside in if they don't shape up here pretty soon. They have handled Arizona lately, but that doesn't matter as much this year because it's a different Arizona. It's Kyler. It's Kingsbury. They're a lot more sharper edged on offense than they were last year. But the Cardinals, they keep finding ways to lose a lot of these games. And the teams they beat, here's that old Brian Billick thing. Atlanta, Cincinnati, and the Giants are combined 5 and 31. So they're really struggling. And they're playing teams that are struggling and beating them, but they can't get over the hump against the good teams. The Ram rush defense is a little bit better this year, so it's going to be all Kyler, I think, throwing. The Rams had covered 9 of their last 12 in the regular season heading into that Monday game. So they have been, cashing tickets for their backers here. Their backers cashing tickets. We took the Rams here 31-21. I think they can go down there and win. Whatever happens against Baltimore, this would be sort of their last chance saloon. They can keep alive at least with a win in Arizona. I think they probably get it.
Chargers in Denver, Bruce. Chargers laying, it's up to 2.5 now. Totals 38.5. Chargers get a little extra rest here. They're always right there, and they just can never kick the door down. Denver had, I don't know, Bruce. You watch the game; they just couldn't do anything against the Bills' defense. But back home, I could see a bounce back effort on offense. The total is low at 38.5.
Boy, yeah, this one not any time capsule game either here. John Elway might as well give a call to old Broncos Steve Tensey or Pete Lisk. Denver's now in its sixth quarterback since 2017. And this brief Brandon Allen era is likely to end when Drew Lock, the Missouri rookie, comes off the injured list sometime in December. That old Bronco winning culture is now a memory as Denver is on verge of losing marks in 3 straight years for the first time since 1970 to 72. That's on Elway. But I don't know that the ownership situation there is going to do anything about it. But Denver now expects to lose games they once expected to win. Maybe Vic Fangio dials up another game plan to fluster the Bolts like he did October 6th at Carson. We watched that game last month on Sunday together, but I'd still rather back Phillip Rivers, even though he looks past his sell-by date and has 7 picks the last 2. I don't think they're going to get swept by Denver this year. Under, though, might be a call. You mentioned that at the start. Denver now 16-4 to the under its last 20. 18-13. We picked an ugly score for what should be an ugly game. Chargers, this Denver situation, it's not pretty in Denver, and I don't think it gets any better on Sunday.
Cleveland 1.5 at Pittsburgh. Total in the game is 40. How many policemen will be lining the field?
Well, like I wrote in the gold sheet, there might be more security on hand at Heinz Field this week than you get on an LL flight into Tel Aviv after the wild melee a couple weeks ago in Cleveland. It looks like Mike Tomlin might not give a chance at revenge to Mason Rudolph, who was pulled last week, especially with this Samford rookie Devlin Hodges bailing out the Steelers for the second time this season. And he plays within himself, and he's making past Pittsburgh relievers like Mike Kruzek and Cliff Stout proud with his efforts. I mean, he's given what they need. Cleveland is back on the edge of the playoff mix after 3 straight home wins, but Baker Mayfield's inconsistencies have been more likely to manifest on the road this season. I do not trust the Browns. Pittsburgh's defense is still good enough and is keeping this team in the playoff race. And I don't mind if they go to Hodges. He played within himself, like I said, that game at the Chargers, and he came off the bench and bailed him out yesterday. I'd give this kid a chance. Why not? 20-16, Pittsburgh. I do not trust the Browns, and this thing could be very interesting, hotly contested in Pittsburgh.
Sunday Night Football, money's come in on Houston. It was 3.5. It's now New England 3 on the road, 44.5. What can we say about New England's defense? They continue to get it done. But Bruce, again, they remain really offensively flawed, and it's unbelievable. In 2 games, the schedule they faced obviously has been very weak, but 2 of the diciest games they played at Buffalo, and then yesterday against Dallas, they won both games because of a blocked punt. Their offense, they're winning games, and their defense is terrific. It's amazing they're winning these games. And this offense cannot do much.
Well, remember last week against Philly too. I mean, they're settling for field goals, and they needed to pull a trick play out of the bag of tricks to score their only touchdown. Brady, he'll get Philip Dorsett and Mohamed Sanu back pretty soon. Neither of those guys really stretches the field. They will give him a couple of more targets.
And the Harry kid looks like he's figuring it out.
Yes, and N'Keal Harry the ASU rookie, might help them. But, listen, they miss Gronk, especially in the red zone, and the running game is not all that dynamic. Now, Houston's secondary might give Brady some room here to do something. They have not been all that airtight. But again, it's the New England defense. It's only allowing 11 per game, and Deshaun Watson might be able to do some business, but again, he might not. And, New England kept Dak out of the end zone. They shut down the Eagles. They're doing it to everybody. Brady was missing Julian Edelman, who was out last year with the suspension when they won that game against Houston early. There's some connections here. I mean, Romeo Crennel is a longtime Belichick guys down there in Houston now. So I think this one's probably under. That's been a good recommendation for the Patriots. 16-4 their last 20 in the regular season. Hey, with a great defense and an offense that ain't doing much, why not look under? But maybe New England wins this thing too. 28-14 Patriots. It's also a vote kind of against Houston, which we don't trust.
Yeah.
So New England to win it and go under, and that's a cold sheet key release as well on the Patriots.
All right, the under I can see, and then the Monday night game, it's over for me. This should be, to me, Seattle, weather can get a little squirrely, but this has Track Meet City written all over it. Minnesota can go up and down the field. Thielen, I think, is likely to return. They've got the running game. They've got the weapons. Don't sleep on Kyle Rudolph. And Minnesota's secondary's pretty suspect. And don't be fooled by Seattle's low-scoring game at Philly. I think, Bruce, these guys go up and down the field. I think it's going to be a fun game, but I like it over 49. Seattle laying 3. I don't know about that.
Well, maybe so on all that. But there is a little subtle change here in the Seahawks the last couple of weeks, because after Russell Wilson spent the past year often bailing out this Seattle defense, the stop unit is suddenly returning the favor with a revived look. They've allowed just 2 TDs, one in garbage time at Philly on the weekend the past 2 weeks, and they're generating constant pressure the past 2 weeks versus Jimmy Garoppolo and Carson Wentz. So next up here is Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, fell far short of outscoring Wilson on another Monday nighter last December at CenturyLink Field. Now it's a little different Vikings offense this season, and we acknowledge the Hawks spread troubles at home this year. They're only 1-4 versus the line, and they needed overtime to get the one cover they did against Tampa Bay. But this 3-game uptick right now is reminding some of us of some past Pete Carroll straight up and spread win streaks. And he has had some doozies in his career. And all of a sudden, Seattle's putting the defense together with the offense. And remember, the Niners scored on a fumble return in that game, in the Monday night game a couple weeks ago. So the defense is playing pretty well. 26-17 Seattle, our score forecast. Your over might be right, too. We kind of like the Seattle side a little bit more, but you might also have a point on the over, sure.
And Seattle, by the way, Bruce, I mean, the game means a lot to Minnesota, but Seattle sitting here, they know they've got to keep pace, and they control their own destiny. It's been the Niners' world, and we all just been living in it. But don't discount Seattle, because they actually control their own destiny in the NFC West.
Yeah, all they have to do is keep winning, because they got that one in the bag over the Niners. So if they beat them again, no matter what San Francisco does and Seattle keeps winning, they face off in the last regular season game. Oh, by the way, it's up there at CenturyLink Field. So, yeah, they do control their destiny. That's a big deal, because, I mean, you're looking at the 1 or the 5 seed probably in the NFC, the difference between winning the West and coming in second. So, yeah, it's all on the table, and Seattle's picking up momentum.
Great stuff, as always. The legendary publication is The Gold Sheet. He's our dear friend, Bruce Marshall. I'm Brian Blessing. We think it's going to be another fun week in the NFL and wish you the very best of luck.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and The Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.